it's on?
It's on.
All right. Ben, thank you so much for the first podcast that we ran a few weeks back, actually a couple of months back. I really enjoyed that. And as a follow-up, today's podcast would be to ask a little bit about who Ben McKee is, how Ben McKee started getting involved in copywriting, how he developed himself as a professional, and how did you get to Australia today? So let's begin with what is your personal story and how it relates to copywriting per se.
Now, cheers for having us on today, Simao. It's great just to follow up from the last time we spoke, as you said, a couple of months ago, and it was a really interesting interview. It was quite well received. Just to give you a quick rundown, Simao, I won't bore people for ages and ages, but when I was growing up, I used to enjoy writing stories in English class at school, that sort of thing, getting up and reading stories to people. I remember back when I was in year 6, we had this assignment where we had to film create advertisements for carrots for some reason. I don't remember why it was, but in my group, I remember suggesting that we kind of did like a stage show, like sort of a vegetable of the year contest or something like that. And we got actual vegetables and put, like eyes in them for stuffed animals. Very basic stuff, but our group actually won that. And but then when I was, when I left high school, I actually went away and did a Bachelor of Animation degree up at QCA up in Brisbane. And I was doing that for a few years. And then got out of that, and the industry isn't that big in Australia, and I majored in 2D animation, not 3D. And then it was funny actually. My mother of all people, I was just working other full-time jobs because the bills need to be paid, that sort of stuff, and she suggested to me, she said, why don't you look at copywriting or something? And I didn't really regard it, put much weight in that opinion at the time, just because I thought, she's just throw enough paint at a wall and hope that it sticks, as the expression goes. Yeah, that's it. And I didn't really think much of it. Like a lot of people, and I'll get to this in a moment, but like a lot of people, I thought copywriting was more writing legal documents or patent writing, and it all just seemed a bit boring to me. And then skip forward probably 6 months, and an old friend of mine who I actually went through uni with, he was a graphic designer as well. And the firm that he worked for, they had a guy who came in and took care of their copywriting. And I was at his place one night and he said to me, he goes, you should take a look at that. Like he said, you should take a look at being a copywriter. And I thought this was interesting because this friend of mine and my mother had never spoken. They'd never met at that point in time, but they're both saying the same thing. So I started looking at everything involved and I realized that literally it is the art of writing words that sell. Writing for businesses, writing for professionals, helping them to advertise themselves, sell their product, that sort of stuff, and it gives you the ability to work pretty much anywhere, and you can make good money from it, ultimately. So it ticked all the boxes for me, and so really from there, Simao, it's just been a gradual process. I did a year's correspondence course with the Australian School of Copywriting down in Melbourne. Got my business name registered, took part in the NEIS program, which is the New Enterprise Incentive Scheme. It's a government thing up in Queensland, did that. It's just been building it since there, really, Simao.
That's funny. That's really funny. And here's the funny part, because I come from a background in communication design, but when I left uni, I thought I was going to be the next 3D master.
Yeah.
I also loved 3D animation and lighting, and actually I was quite well versed at that time, like 20 some years ago, on the most prominent 3D software that was out there on the market.
Yeah.
Obviously, things grew and jumped in leaps and bounds. Maya came along, 3D Max came along, Cinema 4D, everything else. And obviously, if you're not with the industry growing with it, you eventually lose touch, and that's what happened. Because I lived in the south of Portugal, and that was a very tight market for 3D. Did you feel like 3D was not going to be easy to sell at the beginning?
Well, the funny thing was somehow is that I always wanted to do the more traditional sort of 2D style, and I know right now that the craze is to do 3D. Like all the movies are 3D, that sort of stuff. And in first year at uni, we actually had to do a bit of both. And I didn't mind 3D. I didn't mind the modeling and that. I mean, it was quite basic exercise that we were doing. I actually didn't mind it, but it wasn't ultimately what I wanted to do. And yeah, just the other thing was like it was an interesting degree to be in. I don't know if there's anybody that I used to study with watching this, and I don't mean this in a mean-spirited way at all, but it very much felt like, as opposed to high school where it's like the the popular kids are the ones that are good at sport and all that sort of stuff that surf and that. In the animation degree, it was like the geeks are the popular ones, and it just and I didn't fit into that. I didn't really fit in with their humor and all that, and I just thought to myself, well, if I go on to work in this industry like these, I'd be working in this kind of yeah.
I get it. Yeah.
Like it was interesting. The reason I was keen to chat to you again, Simao, last time we spoke, you spoke a lot about growing up in Portugal. You spoke about not just what you do, but what got you there. And that was a really interesting discussion. Look, likewise, it's just funny. Like, I never thought about doing this when I was a teenager, even in my early 20s. Like, the way I saw it was that I was going to end up, because I had an idea for my own series. I wanted to create my own animated series. And that's why I was going away. That's why I studied animation, because I wanted to learn the process, all that sort of stuff. Look, in the end, it was just, I saw what was actually involved with copywriting when I really found out what you can do. And it's funny. It's almost, I don't know if you ever feel like this, Simao, but it feels almost like I need this job. I need to do this, because not just the things that I've learned about the actual business of it, or about writing, or about my clients, or any of that sort of stuff, but it's just the life lessons that I keep getting, the kind of stuff where it's like, well, I would have had to have learnt this lesson one way or another, and it's like this business has given me an excuse to learn these lessons. It's just, I find it fascinating the way it just opens up, like, and you find so much more than what you thought. Yeah.
That can be its own podcast in its own right, because like you just described what I've found through the last 5 years in business. It's been the biggest tool for personal development and discovery, then I would say almost double as much time that I've actually done personal discovery and personal development. So to clarify things further, I've been involved in the personal development industry for about 12 years now. And the last 5 that I've been in business for myself have taught me just as much as about myself and how to work with myself and work with my mindset than almost the 12 years before that, or the 12 last years, doing courses, events, and reading books, and doing formations and all these boot camps and retreats and all of that stuff. It's really sped up the process. And to your point, business really teaches you things that you have to learn.
Yeah.
So it's really funny how life it encapsulates itself in the micro little cosmos that business is. And it can be, you have to deal with other people, other personalities. You have to deal with your own shit. I'm sorry if this is a P-rated podcast.
Nah, fuck it. You can say whatever the fuck you want.
Perfect. You have to deal with your own shit. You have to be put in front of your own fears and insecurities, and you have to deal with them. Otherwise, business will not go forward if you do not go forward. And there's a saying that goes along those lines. Your business will only develop to the point of your development, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
And I completely, wholeheartedly believe that. And the other analogy that is interesting to make with what you just said was that even though 3D was a little bit of too much of a geeky space, and I definitely can recognize those words, because the people that I had around me in 3D, they were extremely, extremely geeky types.
Yeah.
So I also understood that it's going to be fun for me / challenging to operate with these people on an everyday level, because I was in different worlds. I was in the sports world. I was in the geeky 3D world. I was a graphic designer. I was a metalhead, but not exclusive to metal. And I had all these other options. But it's funny that you found a way to storytell, and copywriting, from what you say, provided that path for you to do that.
Well,
and regardless of location, who you do it with, and you just found through the feedback that the world gave you that storytelling was going to be your path into the future.
That's it. And it's just, I mean, again, and it's the contacts you make as well. Like I said, it was actually, this old friend of mine who suggested that I should look into copywriting and that. And he actually designed, like, my business logo, he designed that. And so you can give him credit for that. But it was just funny because we were both in this animation degree, and I think he realized soon that he was just more interested in the design element of it. And so he went and did that. But yeah, we were both, I guess you could say we were kind of kindred spirits in that regard. It's just, oh man, there's so many geeks in this class. And because we both, like, he lived in this student flats up the road from where I did, and like his flat was it was the place to be on the weekends. Like if you saw the fridge in their flat, it looked like a golf ball. Like there'd been that many times people had punched the fridge and, like, you know, sculling the beer bongs on the staircase. Like apparently the student residential, I think res or whatever you call it, like the student board who look after all the flats and that. Apparently there was a book on their flat about that thick, just of misdemeanors and stuff. Like it was some of the friends that I met through him. Like I learned how to play poker through those guys and that. So you had that offshoot as well. And even though in the end, you know, I got through the 3 years and I got the degree and I produced my own student film, which I wouldn't recommend anybody watch. I mean, if it's just it just disappoints. I mean, it's over 10 years ago now, Simao, but it's just a classic example of where the vision that I had for it just did not at all manifest itself in what I produced. But I got that lesson out of it. And the other thing I wanted to add somehow while I think of it is that there are times where I see guys and girls as well in their early 20s, and they're already like, boom, doing this, and they're making good money, and they're flying all around the world, and, you know, they're really taking off. And I see those people, and I'll admit sometimes I think, oh man, I wish I'd wanted to do this, like, you know, back when I was 13 or 14 instead of being a racing driver. I wish, you know, I'd been 12 years old and, you know, gone, I'm going to do this, I'm going to build this business. And I think about that, but then I wonder if I'd started doing this from the age of 18 or 19, and I should stress, like, I'm not talking specifically about any one person here. I'm not thinking of a specific individual while I say this. What I'm saying is that I think if I'd gone down that road, then that road, that there might be a sense of entitlement that I had, and I wouldn't have grasped, you know, because I've worked a whole bunch of different jobs somehow. Like, you know, back when I was at uni, I worked as do you know what a glassy is?
No, is that picking up glasses at a disco?
That's pretty much exactly it. I've worked as a I'll give you some job descriptions. I delivered newspapers. I've worked as a glassy. I've worked retail. I've worked as a storeman and a delivery driver. I drove Uber for like 2 years on the side. Like, I've done all this other stuff. And if I hadn't had those experiences, like I said, you just keep getting lessons about people from all these different places. Like, especially when I was living in Brisbane, living on the Gold Coast as well, and I was driving Uber on the side. Like, that in itself was a fascinating insight into just the way people are. So here I am now, and I look back and think, man, if I'd started doing this, if I'd built Scribe up, you know, when I was 17 or 18, as opposed to being in my late 20s, like, how much could I be making now, and what? But I don't know if I don't think I'd be as rounded as a person, and I really think that would let me down in the years to come. I don't think it would set me up as well.
Absolutely. I think that's another great insight you just shared with everyone. And I don't want to get too spiritual woo-woo, because it's not woo-woo, but it really is a matter of you becoming the person you have to become in order to fulfill your purpose on this earth. And I completely identify with what you just said, to the point of establishing my own example. I also did all sorts of jobs, even through uni, even to support myself through uni. I did bouncing at disco clubs. I did modeling. I did waiting. I did counting people for statistical analytics. I did so many things just to get myself through the process of being able to study one and then complement that with other activities to support my income. And it's such an interesting story, the one you just told, because I completely dress myself in that. I see myself in that, and I still believe that it's serving the future of whatever of ourselves. Meaning by that, you couldn't have become as a complete person if you stuck to being a specialist that much earlier on.
That's right.
So what Gary Vee says, don't worry about becoming the next best paid accountant or corporate gig or do those things right away from the get-go. You have a long time until you figure out what you're really passionate about and then figure out ways of monetizing that passion. And that takes about 5, 10, 20, 30 years in some cases, but here we are now. And I am more than certain than ever that I'm supposed to be doing this. I love what I do. And doubts have come in the past. Don't get me wrong. I've questioned myself a number of times, and the answer keeps coming back, just like in your case.
Yeah, it's. I'm actually. I mean, before you ask me anything else, Simao, I just wanted to go back just on something you just said, because I think. I'm part of a lot of different business groups on Facebook, on LinkedIn, that sort of stuff, and something that I do think needs to be covered more. Is this idea that if you're not successful in your business at one point in time, or if there's a whole bunch of stuff coming on and it's like it's new to you or you can't handle it, that I think that it's pretty much, it's like grains of sand on the beach, this idea that you can't make it and wanting to pack it in. Because I've been in that situation before where, and again, this just brings me back to the lessons you have to learn. I've been in that position on more than one point where I just think about just packing it in, going away and working for somebody else and doing that full time. I think that's a lesson that every business owner has to learn in regards to resilience. And again, like I said, if I'd done this from my my teens, early 20s and that, and everything had gone great, like what if something came up in future? How could I deal with that? I think you really have to learn something in resilience, and I think as you just alluded to, you have to reach this point at least once where you go, oh, stuff this, and you consider walking away. That option has to look appealing to you.
Giving up. Yeah.
That option has to look appealing to you, so that you remember that you came back and that you made that decision. Because if it's all easy for you, are you in it because your heart's in it, or are you in it just because it's easy? And I think that's why a lot of people, they go, traditionally they'd go into a job out of school, out of university, they got the degree, they do that for decades, and then that's when they turn around and they go, like, did I do this because it just kind of fell into place, or is this what I really wanted to do? To anybody who you've got who's watching this, I would say, and I'm sure Simao has spoken about this before, but I really believe that you have to reach that point, whether you're a business owner, whether you're a professional, you have to have reached that point at least once where you go, you know what, do I really want to do this? Like, this is, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I should go away, walk away. And I wrote a post about a year and a half, 2 years ago, about when I was doing a boxing program. And I had the same experience, just wanting to walk away from it because I didn't think that I had what it took. And there's nothing wrong with feeling that. I think that obviously in business, you want to be selling yourself as, I know what I'm talking about, I know what I'm doing, and we're all strong in certain areas, but there's not a single person out there who can cover all these areas. Like I can't cover design in my business. I would leave that to other people, for instance. Accounting, one thing I do know how to do, two things I do know how to do is I know how to present and I know how to write. But that doesn't mean I should be covering everything. And I think if you haven't been challenged at least once, or basically look down the barrel of just, packing and walking away, and you've got your obligations and responsibilities, but I think at least once you have to look over the precipice and you have to say, you know what, I'm going to stick with this. And then you realize that you're more resilient than what you thought you were. And that only makes you stronger going forward.
Yes.
That's my Tony Robbins quote for the day. So, say yes, everyone say aye. Take that to the bank and just play that on loop and get hyped up over that shit.
Yeah. Well said, man. Yeah. I love that. Well, we could go on hours and hours just on this end of things, but to bring it back to copywriting specifically, give us a little bit of an insight of who Ben McKee is as a copywriter, or let's start with, who do you serve mostly? Who's your ideal target audience?
Thanks. That's actually quite a good question. It's a good question because I can answer it quite simply, Simao. I primarily work with business owners and professionals who are time poor. Like, they're not, generally not speaking, they're not startups. They're people who've been in business quite a while and they have a lot of clients. and either through me or through other realizations they've had, they understand the importance of getting their copy spot on. And how I meet that need is I regularly add to and update my clients' content. So we're talking about emails to their database. If you've got a database and you're sending out regular emails, I manage all that for them. Regular blogging as well. I mean, just give me a sec. Like when it comes to keeping a regular blog, I actually did an article on this about a year ago. I just wanted to look at the statistics behind blogging. And as they say, 73% of all statistics are made up. So I took the extra time to dig deep, and I really wanted to make sure the data that I was going to quote from was actually reliable. And so I took the extra time, and what I found was actually quite interesting. Like around 50% of businesses pick up a lead because of a regular blog, just because of that. If you think that it's just something that startups do, or that regular blogging, for instance, is just something small businesses do, well, actually, as of 2017, 36% of the Fortune 500 companies have a regular blog. I mean, if they're doing this, there must be something in it. If you have a regular blog, you are, I think it's 67% more likely to pick up a new lead than if you're not keeping a regular blog. There was a HubSpot survey, and that there were 1,500 people in this HubSpot survey. Just under 800 of them were keeping a regular blog. Of those 800, they reported that since keeping a regular blog, they were getting 55% and a 55% increase in website traffic. So if you're getting
absolutely mind-boggling.
Yeah. So to bring it back to what I provide, Simao, I'm most concerned with value. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who make all kinds of big promises and charge you thousands of dollars for it. But I'm not interested in selling smoke or mirrors or bullshit. What I'm always focused on with every client is the long-term game, and how can I bring the most value to what they're doing through their written content. Yeah. So of course you've got the bread and butter, which is website content or their social media pages, their social media accounts. But then I'm thinking further on, how are they going to keep their content fresh so that they're ranking well on Google? How are they going to share their story? Because like I said at the beginning, yes, copywriting is effectively, it's writing stories that sell, and keeping a regular blog is one of the most effective ways of doing that even now, because people still want to buy from people they trust, especially if you're spending large amounts of money. You want to hand that over to somebody and know that they're the real deal, and that they know what they're talking about and that they're an expert. And regular blogging is how you set yourself apart from that. So in a nutshell, I cater mostly to established business owners and professionals, and they just don't have the time. Nothing wrong with that. I give them their time back. I take care of their written content and keep helping them to sell to new leads and to get those kind of results in a nutshell.
Excellent. Yeah. Very good, Ben. Very good. And again, to your point, just last week we had one of the highest net worth individuals on the planet put out a blog instead of paid media to address a huge smearing / blackmailing campaign. Jeff Bezos put out a blog post last week addressing the accusations that had been falling over him. So that speaks to the power of blogging. And if you want to take a page from somebody's book, you might as well do it from Jeff Bezos. Like, we all have opinions on all these high-profile people, but the fact is that he used the blog. He didn't pay media, and he does have the means to pay the media for massive broadcasts, but instead he chose the blog platform.
That's it. And I'll add as well, somehow, that what I find interesting about this Jeff Bezos situation is that you mentioned Gary Vee earlier, and I'm a follower of Gary Vee. I see a lot of his stuff, and I think again the whole question of why you do this. I think that there's a lot of people who maybe they aspire to be like these people because they want to be making that kind of money and have that kind of reach and that, but you have to deal with everything else. Like, look at Jeff Bezos. If Jeff Bezos was just a guy that worked in some white collar corporate company and he was going through his divorce, like, who would know about it? But everyone knows about it. The fact that he had to publish this blog because there's so many people talking about him. If you want to become a high profile person like that, you also have to face the inevitable fact that it doesn't matter what you're like, it doesn't matter what you're selling, that there's going to be people that don't like you, and there's going to be people talking about you and saying stuff that isn't true, and you have to be prepared to deal with that. If you're gonna aim up like that, you've got to learn all these other lessons. You've got to be prepared for people to misrepresent you, to misunderstand you, for people to not pay you. I've had that. I mean, I only got stung to the tune of a couple of $100, but that at least it cost me $200 to learn the lesson. Never do anything for somebody unless you see the money. And I knew other people who'd been stung by this person to the tune of like $3,000. So I got off scot free. You're going to have to learn all these other lessons. And so Jeff Bezos puts out this blog, great, but he puts out this blog because his wife is leaving him, and because it's Jeff Bezos, everyone wants to talk about it. If you're an individual of influence and prominence, you are going to have people talking about you, and as much as you'd like everybody to say that you're great, it's not going to happen. I'm not everybody's type, and that's fine. It makes my job a lot easier.
I want to speak to a point you just brought up, which is interesting and still prevalent to discuss every now and then, and which is to the point of you don't need to please everybody. In fact, you want to ostracize somebody along the way.
Yeah.
Speak to me about that and what sort of insights you've taken out of these years in business, and what's your current position regarding trying to please everybody versus pissing off a few and being really on spot with even fewer.
No, it's quite simply because if you try to get everybody to like you, you lose your distinctive edge. Have you heard of an author called? My mind's just gone blank. He's Mark Manson. He's got that book out at the moment. The Secret Art of Not Giving a Fuck. It's that book with the bright orange.
My wife had that book. Yeah. I know him.
Yeah. It's funny. There was actually another book he wrote. It was more written on dating, but I've found, especially in my young years as a single guy, I've found that business and relationships are quite similar, and a lot of the principles are very similar. There was a book he wrote on dating called Models. But I remember reading in that he talks about polarization. And it's a book aimed at young men, and he basically encourages men to repeat the mantra, I'm going to get rejected a lot and it's a good thing. And he explains why getting rejected is a good thing. And he said basically because rejection is what keeps people apart who shouldn't be together in the first place. And I think it's the same with business. He talks about why polarization is attractive, i.e. why being the kind of person where a lot of people love you but a lot of people can't stand you is better than trying to please everybody. Yes. And it's the same with business. Like, look, I'm not saying rip people off or any of that sort of stuff. But what I'm saying is I see a lot of businesses. And it's like not really my thing. And then I see a lot of other people, and it's like, oh, this is interesting. I really like what they're doing. And it's the same for your business. You got to be prepared again for people to not be interested in what you're doing. Be prepared for people to walk away. Some people that maybe are going to think, there are people out there who can't stand Gary Vee, but then there's other people out there who like a lot of these more sort of woo-woo entrepreneurs, women who constantly talk about what the universe is giving them and that sort of stuff. And that's not especially like I understand some of what they say, but it's not my thing. But that's other people's thing, as opposed to trying to be everything to. Did you ever watch the UK version of The Office, the original one with Ricky Gervais as David Brent?
I actually started with the UK version, and then I got to the US version.
That's how you start. You see, I think that's a great example because David Brent's character, and Ricky Gervais playing David Brent, his character is a great example of somebody who wants to be everything to everyone and ends up pleasing nobody.
Nobody, and being very frustrated in the process.
Yeah. Because
to himself.
Yeah, because ultimately you don't stand for anything. So again, I think
that's it.
So following what we've discussed so far, I think absolutely you've got to find something that you enjoy doing. You've got to face that point where you look over. It's not a bad thing to look over the precipice and to seriously be tempted just to pack everything up and quit. I think you have to go through that to know that this is what you want to do. I also strongly believe, as I've said, regular blogging, copy, all that sort of stuff. And I'm not just blowing smoke up my own ass up here. I mean, I can send you some links, but I'd encourage people to do their own research and come back to me. And as you've just said, before that, also, if you want to be a big shot, if you want to be, I mean, my name isn't on, on every run sheet yet, on every, conference or that, and my face isn't on billboards. But if you aspire to be the next big thing in your industry, you're going to have a lot of people who are just not going to like you, and they're going to talk about you, and it's going to be bullshit, but you got to accept it. And as you just said, you got to be prepared to polarize people. Polarization. If you really want to carve out your own identity, again, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to love you even more for that identity, and you're going to get people who will be your staunchest followers, but you're going to repel people because of that identity. I'm not for everybody, and I'm fine with that. I'm going to get rejected a lot and have been rejected a lot by leads. That's a good thing, because the people who come towards me, it's very easy and straightforward because they're already on board with what I'm doing. It makes my job so much easier, Simao. So much easier.
Yep. I think we've been through some of the same literature, because I've also read this concept of polarization, especially how it pertains to dating and that whole field. And I'm sure that if we compare some other names, we may have come across the same authors. But I love that conclusion that you just drew for everybody. What other insights do you foresee in entrepreneurship, in business for the future that is still or has started to make an appearance? Like, we now know, and this has not always been clear, at least not to me, and I'm sure that to a lot of people listening to this podcast at the moment, because I still have enough conversations trying to convince people that it's okay not to be liked by everybody. In fact, it's a better strategy to cater to a very niche audience than trying to please everybody and water yourself down in the process. Mm-hmm. So this would be sort of a somewhat recent discovery. Like, let's give it a timeline of the last 10 years. You have all these entrepreneurs, and with the advent of the internet and podcasts and YouTube, everything becoming more liberal, they're coming out and revealing this information to the public, but there is still a resistance to that. And so this being one trend, what other trends do you see in entrepreneurship and business that could be demystified from this point where you sit on your career? That's something that you've observed that you can also start letting people know it's okay not to be such and such, and it's okay, in fact, better to do the opposite of that. Good.
I'll admit, like, that's quite a long-winded question. I was getting to the point where I'm like, but then, like, you beautifully summed it up in the last 10 seconds. So thanks for saving my ass there. Okay, I'll say this. I think that especially, over the last 10 years, like, if I had $1 for every time I hear about, generally younger entrepreneurs talk about wanting to build an empire, or I hear people sort of glorifying what Gary Vee calls the hustle. The fucking hustle, man. You got to fucking hustle. You got to be creating 3,000 pieces of new content a day. If you're not creating 3,000 pieces of new content a day, you're not working fucking hard enough. Now, I think that, we pride ourselves on working hard. There's hard work is considered a virtue, but I think that hard work is actually a carryover from the industrial age. Now, I don't agree with everything that he writes, but I think that if you're a startup business owner, entrepreneur, you should go read Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Workweek, just because, I'm not saying that that's how you should operate your business, but just because it opens you up to this idea that the amount of time you spend at work is not necessarily time that you're going to be paid for. And the reason that I think, the reason we've come to we've put such a virtue on hard work is, first of all, it's a hangover from the industrial era, and we no longer live in the industrial era. This idea of working up a sweat, 8-hour day, 9-hour day, and then you're exhausted, you've earned your pay. But also because we go, traditionally we'd go to offices, we'd work, that same time period, and again, because you put in that certain amount of time, you should get these kind of results. And it's the wrong way to look at it. I think what's going to emerge, and I already see emerging in the next, say, 10 years, is ironically maybe the anti-hustle, the realization, get leverage for the time that you spend. Maybe you could achieve, maybe what it's taking you 10 hours to achieve, you could do more effectively in 5 hours. This is going to sound counterproductive coming from me when so much of what I do is involved with social media and websites and that, but and I could really do this better myself, I'll admit, but don't spend so much time on the internet. If you really want to develop your niche, or your niche, however it's pronounced, if you really want to sort of polarize and be okay with not everybody liking you, spend more time outside. Because what's important is there's going to be a whole lot of faceless people that will disapprove of you on social media here, there. But you got to ask yourself, first of all, who are the people that are doing the criticizing? And number two, would you want to trade places with that person? Are they somebody that you know? Are they somebody you respect? That makes it much easier. So to bring it back to what I'm saying is, yes, at the moment there's still very much this glorification of the hustle and I work so hard, and people almost taking pride in the fact that they've almost been hospitalized from stress and that. And it's
That's
stupid.
A big badge of honor right there. The almost being dead, hospitalized. It took me 5 heart attacks. I've heard them all. And go on.
Really good. I mean, look, it's stupid. It's like me wanting to build yourself up, like being into weightlifting and that, and then priding yourself on the fact that you.
I almost broke a leg, or ruptured a muscle, or snuffed a tendon, or something like that, because I trained so hard and I'm so good.
That's it. I think it's the art of doing just enough, Simao. And I think what trend is going to emerge is that people are going to, instead of glorifying working hard and the cliches of the hustle and building an empire. And like I said, if I had $1, I think it's just looks like I've just cut out here. Sorry guys. Hang on. Let's just. Sorry, it's just cut out here, guys. All of a sudden, bear with me. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Don't know. Hang on, this is...
your audio is muted, apparently.
Hang on, let's have a look. Okay.
Yeah, so we left it up. I think this was the 40-minute mark for Zoom. We were going right through the advantage of hustling.
That's right. Okay, and yeah, that's right. And you're asking me about. I actually kept the camera rolling the whole time, so you can get the lost footage. It's not very interesting. It's just me scrambling around. Now, look, what I was saying is, I think what we're going to see is people focusing more on being productive with more limited hours as opposed to working longer hours, and there's going to be more pride in people developing. At the risk of sounding like one of these new agey gurus, but. People are going to take more pride in everything else their life has to offer, not just making a certain amount of money and being the next big thing. And I think that we're going to see, it's, as opposed to people taking pride in the hustle or building an empire, you're going to start to see terms like lifestyle thrown around a lot more, and balance is going to, I think, become the new buzzword. I think that, like I said, my advice to people is whatever you do during the workday, do what you can. But then take time out and do that every day. And don't let anybody say that you're lazy if you prefer to wake up a bit later. Do whatever is going to make you most effective. Some people are happy to wake up at 4 a.m. every day of the week and that. But when I do what I do as a creative, I love my sleep. If I'm gonna like my philosophy is if I'm gonna give 100% to every client that I have, then I need to be 100% for them. I need to be 100% in terms of mind frame, everything else. So yeah, look, I think we're going to reach a point in the next 10 years where people are going to start taking more pride in everything else beside their business and it being part of their entire life instead of just their business and the amount of money that they're making and that being pedestalized, I think.
Brilliant. Yes.
We got there in the end. We got there in the end despite the cutout, which is great.
Long-winded question and even more encompassing answer. That was very good. So that's pretty much a wrap.
Cool.
Thank you very much for that, Ben. I really enjoyed it. I think we have a few more podcasts in us.
Definitely.
Just around these topics. There's definitely a lot of points to compare and create analogies, because you just mentioned a very interesting path that I would love to pick apart and start sort of compare to my own little discoveries along the way. But in the meantime, while we don't do that, let us know where we can find you online. Right? How can people find you?
Okay. Well, yes, people can find me online. And I mean, I'd be happy to provide some links for you to share with people. But if you want to contact me personally, you can reach me at ben@scribecopywriting.com.au. The website is scribecopywriting.com.au. Very easy to find. I'll provide you the link to my Facebook, the Scribe Facebook page, my LinkedIn account as well. You can follow all of those. I'd encourage people to join my database as well. I'm a firm believer that spam only belongs on the supermarket shelves, doesn't belong in your inbox. So what I share with my group, I'm always sharing great strategies, not just writing strategies, but marketing strategies. Some of the stuff we've gone over in the last half an hour or so, and I also always share my latest articles as well. So get on that list. Yeah. That would be my number one recommendation. Otherwise, I will send you the links so that anybody watching, you can get in contact with me straight away, and let's get a discussion going.
Fantastic.
All right.
That's really good, Ben. Thank you again for everything.
No worries.
I'm looking forward to the next opportunity.
Yeah, we'll chat soon, mate.
All right.
Peace out. Bye. Peace. So that's a wrap on that one. So what are we? Just over 40 minutes. Look, guys, it's always interesting chatting to Simao, and there's a lot to take in there. I was happy to return the favour for him and speak to him. But yeah, look, if you've got any other questions about anything that we've spoken about today, I'll make sure to send in the links as well. You can get in touch with us. We'll take it from there. Otherwise, you'll see me on Words from the Scribe very soon, and I'll be talking more about the articles. About the articles that I've sent and that I've shared more recently. So take a look at those for yourselves, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's little interview. There'll be more where that comes from. Otherwise, until next time, I will catch you all later.